Instructions for the proceedings. I'm also going to inform everyone that we are also live streaming this event on our YouTube channel, so you are more than welcome to check that as well in case Zoom does not function. With that being said, we will now officially begin our joint webinar with RCSs. Welcome to IPRI RCS's joint webinar on the contribution of Pakistan and Sri Lanka towards regional connectivity, an analysis of SAARC. I am Javeria Kulthum Atif, your MSc for the event, and I am joined with Ms. Harini from Sri Lanka to steer this webinar. With that being said, Pakistan and Sri Lanka are two important countries in South Asia whose relations date back to the formative years, and the foundation of their friendship began somewhere in 1948. In 2023, however, we're seeing both countries facing certain challenges, but beyond challenges also lie opportunities. I must inform audience members that all points and constructive criticisms in the discourse mentioned today by all speakers is their own viewpoint and may not necessarily represent the viewpoint of RCSs and IPRI. This is a platform to indulge in ideas, of course. Without further ado, I would also request Ms. Harini to introduce our CSs before we move on to the welcome address of our representatives.
So thank you so much. And I would first like to thank Major General Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed, President of the Islamabad Policy Research Institute, including the entire Islamabad Policy Research Institute on behalf of the Regional Center for Strategic Studies, for cooperating with us to facilitate this joint webinar. I would also like to welcome all the eminent speakers and guests from the respective countries joining us for this session. As was mentioned by Ms. Javaria, Sri Lanka and Pakistan from historical times to the present have sought to operate on a broad spectrum of cooperation from various fronts, from economics to political and cultural. And this is particularly due to their geopolitical, economic, security interests in the region. It is a partnership that has persevered through time and strengthened despite the global and regional travails, and one that we hope that will continue into the future. I now invite Professor Naini Melagoda, Executive Director of the Regional Center for Strategic Studies, to deliver the welcome remarks.
Thank you, Harini. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the Islamabad Policy Research Institute, IPRI, and also the Regional Center for Strategic Studies, RCSS, to this joint webinar on contribution of Pakistan and Sri Lanka towards regional connectivity and analysis of SAARC. I welcome all our friends from Islamabad and elsewhere in Pakistan. So many familiar faces, so many people we know and we have heard of here in Sri Lanka. A very warm welcome to Major General Ambassador Dr. Raza Mohammed, President of IPRI, and also the staff of IPRI for the last few weeks collaborated with RCSS to make this a success. So a very warm welcome to all of you as well. And I welcome Dr. Salma Malik, somebody who has close relations with us at RCSS through her work through the GPAC South Asia Secretariat. So Dr. Salma Malik, a warm welcome to you. And also I extend my welcome to the other speakers from Pakistan this afternoon. That is Dr. Shahid Hashmat, a very good friend of Sri Lanka. He was the former High Commissioner of Pakistan to Sri Lanka, who still has many friends. And if I'm not mistaken, the parliamentarian Imtiaz Bakir Marker, even though it's a parliament day in Sri Lanka, said he's going to join to hear him. So a warm welcome to Dr. Shahid Hashmat, and also to Dr. Safa Nawaz Jaspal, Dr. Dr. Jaspal and Dr. Salma Malik, both from Kaidia Assam University. I hope I pronounced it correct. It is a university I have visited twice. Brings back very nice memories of Islamabad and Pakistan. And also we have quite a number of students, I think from both ends. When I last checked, 50 participants have joined. So there is a group of students from the Kotalavla Defense University, Sri Lanka, who are taking part in this session. Thank you all for coming in for this very important webinar on analyzing the work of SAARC. And I also welcome the students from the University of Colombo, the undergraduate and postgraduate students. Thank you so much for joining. I hope all of you will be, all of you will find this very interesting in your research and your work, as well as Sri Lanka's cordial friendship with Pakistan, Pakistan's hard power, soft power, analyzing that, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, cricket soft power. There are so many things, we share with Pakistan. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to welcome all of you. And I look forward for future collaborations with IPRI in the, future collaborations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nayani. It was a warm welcome from your end. And now I would like to request President IPRI, Ambassador Dr. Major General Raza Mohammed. He has held various prestigious command and staff assignments. He has also served as the Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Defense Production. President IPRI, after his retirement, was also appointed as Ambassador of Pakistan to Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles, and Comoros. He has been Executive Director, Services in the Army Welfare Trust, and Advisor to the President, National Defense University, Islamabad. Mr. President, please share your welcome remarks with us.
Thank you so much, Javeria, for giving me the floor. And first of all, I would like to welcome and thank RCSS and Dr. Nayani for your very kind remarks. I am also happy to see Madhuria, who is co-hosting and is a MOC along with Javeria from our sides. I would like to also welcome Professor Chamida and Dr. George, who will be speakers here. And it's a great honor to have with us Dr. Jaspal, Dr. Samina Malik, and Ambassador Dr. Major General Shahid Ashmat, retired. General Shahid Ashmat, I learned from him also. He taught a course to us when I was doing my MPhil in the National Defense University. So welcome you, sir. And similarly, Dr. Jaspal, Dr. Sarma, they're friends, they're also mentors, they're also teachers. So everyone very welcome, and I am very grateful to you, ma'am, and RCSS that you have made it possible that we hold a joint webinar. And the subject is of great importance. As you all know, we will be having discussion mostly on the contribution of Pakistan and Sri Lanka towards the regional connectivity, and within that, the analysis of the SAARC. As you all know, that SAARC came into being with great hopes that South Asia would be integrated and people of South Asia would benefit from it, and integration, connectivity, mutual trade will grow, and that is how our societies would be emancipated. Unfortunately, I don't hesitate in saying that SAARC has become actually hostage to our bilateral rivalries, and especially Pakistan and India's rivalry. Although both the countries have been hosting initially the summit meetings, but unfortunately for past few years, the efforts have not been successful. Few people say that perhaps SAARC is dead. I would say no, it's not dead. There is so much under the SAARC which is functioning. There are so many arms and so many branches, I would say, so many sub parts of the SAARC which are functioning in various countries, various places. They have offices in all the member countries. About the connectivity and trade, I think we see it, we all see it as a future for the South Asia, future for the whole world, I would say, future for the Asia connecting with Europe, and future for Asia and Eurasia together connecting with Africa through Indian Ocean. Because you know it, that recently, not recently, it's now 10 years, that Belt and Road Initiative, initially called as One Belt and One Road Initiative, was announced by China. And it has 6 corridors, and one of the corridors runs through Pakistan, which is CPEC, and it has progressed quite a lot. When we go to the infrastructure side, CPEC is already functional in a way that Gwadar Port is functional, its roads are functional. Afghanistan is doing trade through it, and recently we have sent the convoys of goods and other things, luggage, to Central Asia. So it is working well. Now, there is no doubt that interdependence is the way forward. We have the example of China. China has perhaps the now worst of the relations, we may say, or there is a global rivalry going on between China and United States, but still they have a trade and trade surplus in favor of China and hundreds of billions. Similarly, same goes for India, Japan, Australia, and so many other countries. So they're still connected, and that is what the solution is, the interdependence, that despite the rivalry and other things, the people, non-state actors or people below the state, are interacting with each other, collaborating, and perhaps when the destinies are intertwined, these could help overcome the regional rivalries, the regional instability, and more than that, the trade connectivity are the way forward for better future of the whole of South Asia, Eurasia, and Africa, as I said. What hinders it is, there are a few things which are hindering it, and major thing is the global competition which goes on between United States and China. And it has been further fueled, exacerbated by the war in Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine war. Presently, the West is focused there, and second focus of the West or United States is to contain China by all means. And within that, India becomes the strategic partner of United States of America here in this region. And that gives India an advantage politically, socially, economically, militarily. It is being propped up as a bulwark of United States here in the region. And this actually makes India quite strong, quite arrogant as well. Arrogance comes from the relevance, arrogance comes from the strong political, economic, and military support, and also from the populism which is there in India now. And Mr. Modi enjoys the populist support, or he rides the vehicle of popularity and Hindutva. But notwithstanding that, what is important is that I will end my introductory remarks with one example, which I often quote, that is of the issue. First World War, Second World War, 30 Years War, so many other wars, fight on coal, fight on steel, fight on various resources was there in Europe. They killed millions of each other. Second World War, 50, 55 millions are the figure in the whole world. But after that, perhaps they decided that the best way to move forward is not to fight in the battlefield, but compete each other economically with positivity and giving chance to each other. And that is how they started the friendship with establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community, and then EEC, if you remember, it was Economic Community, European Economic Community, and then it is EU, like one country today. So if this can happen in Europe, why can't we, people in South Asia, emulate this for good of future of our people, our generations? With these few remarks, once again, thank you to all the speakers, thank you to all the participants. And I think Dr. Nayani was right. They were 50, but now they're 57, 56 participants. I think it is going to be increasing in the number. The participation is going to be increasing in number. And as she said, it is going to be very beneficial, not only for the student, but for people like us, because we will learn from each other. With this, I once again extend my gratitude, wish you all the best, and hand you over back to Javeria. Thank you, Javeria. Please.
No problem. I believe Ms. Harini will be moving forward with the opening of our discourse now. Please, Harini, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Javaria, and thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for delivering for your remarks. Now, without further ado, I now would like to take this opportunity to introduce the speakers from Sri Lanka. Our first speaker is Dr. George Cook, who is a diplomatic historian and an experienced diplomat, having served in the Sri Lankan Foreign Service and as the first secretary of the permanent delegation of Sri Lanka to UNESCO. He is a senior lecturer at the Department of International Relations and has obtained his doctorate and master's from the University of Colombo. He is also the initiator of the Awarealog Initiative, a virtual platform for awareness and dialogue in the sphere of international relations and its related areas. His main area of research include diplomacy, foreign policy, regionalism, and integration, having authored numerous publications pertaining to the aforesaid areas of interest, and has sought to utilize his practical experience with his academic knowledge to inspire and educate the next generation of diplomats. Our second speaker is Professor Chaminda Padmakumara, a professor of international relations at the Department of International Relations, currently serving as the head of the Department of International Relations, Faculty of Arts, University of Colombo. He has a doctorate from the South Asian University of India and a master's from University of Colombo, and has authored numerous publications pertaining to the research areas of regional integration, organizations in international relations, non-state actors, and global civil society, and has presented on various aspects of international relations, in particular South Asia. I now invite Ms. Javaria to introduce the Pakistani speakers. Over to you, Ms. Javaria.
Thank you, Ms. Harini, for introducing the Sri Lankan speakers. I will now move on to introduce our guest speakers from Pakistan. Joining us today, Ambassador Shahid Hashmat. He is the former High Commissioner of Pakistan to Sri Lanka and has 42 years national international military leadership and higher education management experience, including 7 years as a general officer in Pakistan Army, over 3 years in UN peacekeeping, and 2 years as dean at a national university. We're also joined here today with Dr. Salma Malik, who is the Associate Professor at the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies, Quaid-e-Azam University, and she specializes in the areas of conflict and security studies and South Asian affairs. Along with that, we're also joined here today with Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal Sahab. He's professor at the School of Politics and International Relations at Quaid-e-Azam University. His research is multidisciplinary and important, and has given important input South Asian affairs as well. I welcome you all for joining us today. We will be beginning the discourse with Dr. George Cook, and from that point we will move on with the rest of our speakers. With that being said, after all speakers are done giving their 10 to 15 minutes discourse on their subject, we will then move on to the discussion and question answer session, where the audience members can write down their questions in the chat, and myself and Harini will be posing those questions to our guest speakers. With that being said, Dr. George Cook, you may begin your presentation.
Thank you very much, Javaria and Harini, and huge word of thanks to Ambassador Dr. Raza Muhammad and Senior Professor Naini Milagoda, the two heads of the two institutions which are collaborating to organize this particular webinar, where we're focused on a very timely issue. We're talking about neighbors in a neighborhood. We're talking about action that has been taken, opportunities that we might have lost, opportunities that we must further explore, and where we can take the conversation forward. And this is where I would like to look at it from a non-state actor perspective. in terms of reinvigorating non-state actor cooperation in South Asia, and why regionalism is important, or why we should focus on regionalism, and where we can take SAARC as an institution forward, but also where we can strengthen the whole concept of regionalism, which is what we are very concerned about, and where it benefits smaller countries. We are indeed honored that we have the former Pakistani High Commissioner also on this panel. Excellency, it's good to see you once again, someone who was very keen to see a further strengthening of Sri Lanka-Pakistan relations, but someone who also very actively tried to promote SAARC during his time in Sri Lanka. And I'll come to that in a short while. But why regionalism? Why do we need to focus on regionalism? And quite interestingly, what we are noticing is that we have strong bilateral connectivity in many cases. Ambassador Dr. Raza Muhammad may have mentioned one relationship may not be as strong as it should be, but when it comes to connectivity across our region, country to country, we do have strong bilateral connectivity. We are trading with each other. We have tourism being engaged upon. We have cooperation taking place in the military realm. We have it taking place in the political realm. We do see that happening, but something that we need to see happening much more is the strengthening of the weak regional connectivity which we are experiencing in South Asia. This is a huge problem. This is something that we've got to address, something we've got to talk about. And it is a matter that is not something that we can put on the back burner anymore. We are now many years after the scheduled SAARC summit, which did not take place. Why didn't it take place? What efforts have been taken to make sure that we are going to move forward? I have it at some point. Why is it necessary? This is where, when we're doing an analysis of SAARC, it's very important to examine that particular summit and what we can do to take it forward. From a small island perspective, looking at Sri Lanka as a small state, for small states, regionalism is crucial. Sri Lanka has embarked upon programs of regionalism. We have looked at regionalism from a much wider perspective. In the 1960s, Joseph Nye talked about regionalism based on geography, based on neighbors, based on regions in which we live. But thereafter, when we come to 2001, Peter Katzenstein is talking about how regions are politically made. Today, we have regionalism based on religion, based on history, based on trade, based on language, based on culture. We have so many regional groupings that have come into existence. And if we look at SAARC from 1985 onwards, we saw huge interest coming out of Sri Lanka, whether it was, and this is just a pictorial representation for you of some of the main moments that we have seen of Sri Lanka engaging with SAARC, whether it was the first summit that took place in 1985, whether it was the first summit that was hosted in Sri Lanka in 1991, whether it was the marking of a decade. We even went to the extent of talking about 1 decade of SAARC in 1995. The fact that progress had been made as a region, we were trying to overcome a lot. History is replete with problems, but the most important aspect of history is learning from those problems and looking at how we can take the journey forward, how we can move forward. We saw the hosting of the SAARC summit in 1998 to coincide with Sri Lanka's 50th anniversary of independence. We then saw the hosting of the 15th SAARC summit, which coincided with Sri Lanka's 60th anniversary of independence in 2008. Sri Lanka has given a lot of emphasis to SAARC. Sri Lanka has invested heavily in SAARC. Pushing SAARC forward, making SAARC work is certainly in Sri Lanka's interest, as it is in the case of all member states that belong to our region, having transitioned from 7 to 8 with the inclusion of Afghanistan as well. But one thing that we sometimes forget, one thing that we sometimes leave by the wayside, are thoughts, views that were expressed by Cardinal Richelieu several centuries ago. Several centuries ago, why? Why is it relevant today? This is where, when he noted that diplomacy should be a continuous process aimed at creating durable relationships rather than attempting to make opportunistic advances, when he made this observation at a time where France was at its helm under French kings, when there was so much of expansionism taking place through their naval power, we saw this on the world stage, but yet a country at its prime, at its peak, was very concerned about the need for engaging in diplomacy. This remains relevant to date. We might have come 10 years after the establishment, 20 years, 30 years. The years are going by, but what are we doing to strengthen that cooperation or that collaborative nature? This is where one of those sticky moments or one of those major obstacles that we faced was the indefinite postponement of the SAARC summit in 2016. This was extremely unfortunate. And this is where, from a personal point of view, looking at history, trying to understand where we are, one thing that has been continuously argued, and which I would like to argue, is that Sri Lanka could have and should have played a role of mediation in overcoming the obstacles at that particular time. What did we do? What efforts did we take to try to remove the creases, to try to reduce the misunderstanding? What did we do? And once again, retrospectively looking at it, what did Sri Lanka do at that particular juncture to overcome that particular challenge? We are reminded of the fact that at that time in Sri Lanka, we had the Sirisena Wickremesinghe government, which could have used the officers of a former president of this country, Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, to engage in shuttle diplomacy. Shuttle diplomacy is not something new for Sri Lanka. This had been done during the time of Sirimao Bandaranaike when she engaged in shuttle diplomacy using the Colombo powers, as they were known at that time, bringing together certain non-aligned countries which were trying to ensure that India and China did not go to war. Mrs. Bandaranaike did not resolve the issue between India and China, but certainly the efforts that were made at that point in 1962, just 2 years into her premiership, after she became the world's first woman prime minister, the efforts that were taken at that point really made a huge difference. And this is where even the term shuttle diplomacy had not been coined at that juncture. Quite ironically, when you Google the term shuttle diplomacy, you do not find her name. You get the name of Henry Kissinger coming up very often. But that's because the term had been coined much later in the 70s. But whether we go back to the 1960s, whether we go back to the role of Sri Lanka at that particular time, shuttle diplomacy should have been one of the main recourses that we resorted to at that particular juncture in trying to see how we could overcome the obstacles that took place. But what happened has happened. One thing that we've got to be mindful of is the fact that individuals can change their neighborhoods. Countries can't. Whether countries in the region, whether we like it or not, we are in the place that we are. Our geography is not going to change drastically over the next 100 to 200 years. This is where we've got to be mindful that we've got to make good neighbors. We've got to work with neighbors. Whatever the problems are, whatever the obstacles may be, we've got to find ways and means of overcoming those challenges. Otherwise, regions as a whole are not going to move forward. And this is where we need to strengthen the regional platform that we have at this particular stage. In terms of looking ahead, and this is where the non-state actor role becomes that much more important. We've seen governments trying to come together. We've seen governments trying the most of the process. We've seen governments failing at times in order to make that progress. Governments might have done everything within their purview at that particular time in keeping with what they thought was timely. But what are we going to do as a part of civil society? What are we doing as part of academia? What are we doing as part of various other segments of society, which civil society is seen as guardians of society? What is academia doing in terms of the dissemination of knowledge, of building of awareness? What more can we do? What more should we be doing? And this is where we've got to deconstruct the challenges. In that process of deconstructing the challenges, we've got to be mindful that there are a plethora of areas for reinvigorated cooperation through continuous engagers and engagement. If we do not have these exchanges, if we do not get to know each other, if we do not take bold steps forward in terms of mooting cooperation, we're going to continue living in suspicion. We're going to continue living in isolation. We're going to continue living as a region that is not united. And this is where South Asia, given the fact that it provides so much to the world, we talk about it being the granary of the world. We talk about the large number of peacekeeping troops that we provide to the world, but we do so in our individual capacities, not as a collective force. This is where SAARC has massive potentials, and Sri Lanka and Pakistan can play very, very crucial roles at this particular time. If we look at the areas, if we talk about education very briefly, educational exchanges between universities, absolutely crucial, taking it to the realm of research where things collaborate. The forum that we are experiencing right now, where the RCSS and IPRI have come together to look at ways and means of how we can understand the problems. We've got to address the issues. We've got to accept that there are problems, accept that there are challenges, but most importantly, look at ways and means through which we are going to overcome those. What are we doing in terms of media collaboration? Do our media organizations know each other, engage with each other, share programs with each other? Recently, we've seen organizations in Sri Lanka in the media realm partnering with media organizations in other parts of the world, especially in the Asia Pacific region, in order to provide programming from those countries so that we have an exchange going on. Sri Lanka and Pakistan should be looking at something on these lines. What are we doing in the realm of science? We also talk about the importance of tourism. When we look at technology coming on board, when we look at agriculture, we have best practices. In our individual countries, in Pakistan or in Sri Lanka or in the whole of South Asia, we may not be at the very helm of this particular area. We may not be at the cutting edge of science, but we do have collaboration. We do have knowledge sharing that can take place. What more are we doing in order to inspire that kind of collaboration, that kind of coming togetherness, which is what we need very, very bad. If we look at religion, Sri Lanka and Pakistan have a massive bond. We talk about common religions in the two countries, and it is not only in the realm of Islam. This is where when you go into Buddhism, Pakistan is a massive repository of so many Buddhist relics, of Buddhist sites, which would be excellent for Buddhist diplomacy between the two countries. We've had many delegations from Sri Lanka, led by the clergy, being invited to Pakistan. I do believe during the time of His Excellency the Ambassador as well, there were missions that were undertaken and have been continued from that point onwards. This is the kind of Buddhist diplomacy or religious diplomacy that can be engaged upon, that can be enhanced and taken forward. We don't have to wait for governments to do it. This is where non-state actors can play a role and should be playing a role in order to inspire that connectivity. And of course, when we talk about culture, we need to understand each other's cultural attributes. Culture is evolving. Culture is not static. We talk about a 2,500-year-old cultural practice in Sri Lanka, which continues to evolve. Pakistan is experiencing the same. This is where we need to understand each other. We have a beautiful tradition that we follow in Sri Lanka, where before we start an event, we light an oil lamp. And it is said to dispel darkness. And this is where light is understood to be knowledge. And in that dissemination process, what are we doing? If we were all stuck in a room, an extremely dark room where we didn't know each other, we would be extremely suspicious of what was going on in there. But the moment we light a candle, put a bulb on, we see each other, we know each other, we get to know each other. The levels of suspicion go down. This is where through those cultural exchanges, we would be able to see a reduction in suspicion, a reduction in ignorance, but instead a boosting of knowledge, which is something absolutely vital. And of course, in the realm of technology, looking at how South-South cooperation can be boosted. What more are we doing for that particular arena in order to ensure that we are sharing our best practices? And this is where we need to focus on people-to-people connectivity. When surveys are done, and I've done surveys in Sri Lanka and in Nepal, for example, where when you ask people, if they were to receive a free return ticket to any part of the world, where would they go to? They're all looking at countries far away from South Asia. This was the result of a survey done in Sri Lanka, as well as a survey done in Nepal. People are not looking at traveling within our own region. This is something that we've got to address. This is something that we've got to promote, people-to-people connectivity. It is when people understand people that their leaders understand each other, because they're forced to do so by their people. And enhancing people-to-people connectivity becomes absolutely vital. Finally, in concluding some ideas I would like to share with this webinar today, I take an old Chinese proverb that says, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. We're not looking at war. We don't want war. We want to do everything possible to avert war. But what is this war that we're talking about here? The obstacles, the challenges that we are facing. We should be proactive at this particular juncture. We should be sweating it out. We should be making sure that we're doing everything possible to enhance connectivity, be it people to people, be it think tank to think tank, be it academic institution to academic institution. be it individual to individual. This is the sweating process that we need to see taking place right now. At that point, we are going to come to a stage of maturing, where when it comes to the challenges, we're going to be able to deal with them much better. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be a part of the webinar. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. George Cook. In fact, I absolutely endorse the positivity in your presentation and the avenues that you've highlighted for Pakistan, Sri Lanka, as well as the larger cooperation between South Asian countries. With that being said, I will now be moving on to Ambassador Shahid Hashmat. So please kindly make your presentation. We are looking forward.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible to us.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, right at the outset, let me say that I have no formal presentation to make. With so many friends and so many known faces from the country I love, Sri Lanka, and a lot of people known from Pakistan as well. First of all, let me congratulate RCSS and IPRI for organizing a webinar on such an important issue and with such an important friendly country. A word regarding RCS. I know the new executive director, Dr. Nayani. Probably I've seen her for the first time. I've been associated with this organization for 2 years when I was there in Sri Lanka, and they were very kind that in one form or the other, I'm still the member of their International Research Committee. So my regards to Professor Dr. Gamani, a very old and a dear friend, and Professor Jayawardene, both who were former executive directors. Ibuan, sorry, I think my pronunciation has gone a little bad, to Dr. Cook and to other Sri Lankan friends, all known faces, and very kind of them for their nice words. Coming on to the importance of the connectivity, which is the main subject of today's webinar. I would like to say that there's a long list of desirables, and there is equally a good list of doables, not as long as desirable. More than a theoretician or an academician, since my whole experience of the military life is more in the domain of a practitioner, so I would like to combine my experience of 2 years in Sri Lanka and my theoretical knowledge of regional connectivity and regional diplomacy, and will try to be as realistic as possible. Whereas I would like to be more optimistic. However, there are certain ground realities. If they are not talked about and if they are not mentioned, we may not be reaching to correct conclusions. We may roam around in the domain of desirables only. First of all, as far as the Pakistan-Sri Lanka relations are concerned, I need not to say a single word. I think Dr. Nayani and Dr. Cook have already said a lot. I would say there are 3 or 4 main pillars on which our relationship stands. Geography. We are close friends, closely located. We are near neighbors, if not directly related, because normally the concept of the neighborhood is only through land connections. I used to say that we are direct neighbors of Sri Lanka. Pakistan is a direct neighbor of Sri Lanka through Indian Ocean. It's the water which connects us. So it's the geography. Then is the history. it's not only the history which starts from 1947 and 48. We have remained associated for many, many centuries. Uh, Sri Lanka's, Sri Lanka is mostly Buddhist. The Buddhism, though initiated, was initiated from a border region between India and Nepal, but the for certain denominations of Buddhism which spread in China and in Korea and in Far East and even in Sri Lanka, they all were taken by various monks from Pakistan or the region which later on formed Pakistan, which is called Gandhara region or the Gandhara civilization. And its origin was Odhiana, which is today's Savat. As Dr. George Cook has said, that there are numerous, rather countless relics and holy sites of stupas and monasteries and quite a large number of other archaeological sites which relates to Gandhara civilization or to the Buddhist civilization. The third, pillar beyond geography and history is our current diplomacy. When I say the current diplomacy, it starts from 1948, from the recognition of Sri Lanka by Pakistan, and later on being both countries being part of non-aligned movement, and we had a lot of other connections as well. Pakistan had contributed a lot in helping Sri Lanka in fighting terrorism, their own domestic grown and foreign funded, foreign supported, foreign created terrorism, which really played havoc in Sri Lanka for more than 10 years, maybe 20 years in total, from 1983 to 2009. So, that's another aspect of our collaboration and cooperation. We have cooperated in our beyond diplomacy, in the military diplomacy, in defense cooperation, and of course, in at the global level in United Nations peacekeeping as well. Now, if we move beyond culture and history and geography, and we come to today's time, we have a lot of commonality. We have some differences as well. We have a lot of positive aspects which can help us in remaining connected, and which can help us to take advantage from the connectivity which is quite possible. The geographic location of Pakistan and Sri Lanka, I would just like to say only two words. Pakistan is located at a place where physically, without getting into any global game of great game or of a global game of geopolitics or geoeconomy, nobody can deny that Pakistan acts as a bridge between Central Asia, West China, and South Asia, and through Indian Ocean, with the Middle East, with East Africa, and beyond Middle East to Mediterranean to the Europe as well. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, Sri Lanka is located at a very, very important and a significant geostrategic place. It's in the center of, in the heart of Indian Ocean. So any kind of connectivity, if we are talking in terms of the physical connectivity, because connectivity has two different dimensions. Connectivity is the physical connectivity, which can be through sea lanes, through various other means of transportation. It could be by air, it could be through sea, it could be transshipment, and it could be the connectivity on people to people, business to business, and the cultural connectivity as well. Now, coming on to what hasn't happened and why it has not happened. I will briefly mention of some of my personal experiences slightly later. Sri Lankan people are very wonderful people. They are peace-loving people. and they want to live in peace and harmony. And of course, they are equally concerned about their economic progress and their political stability as it would be in case of any other country. Uh, I think General Raza also mentioned about SAARC. Let me be very frank. For 2 years, I've been talking about SAARC. I've been talking about cooperation and connectivity within SAARC, within South Asia. But the hard fact is that the kind of competition and the rivalry which General Raza mentioned between two major partners, members of the SAARC, between India and Pakistan, and their inability, I'm using the word, their inability to resolve their conflicts in a peaceful manner or in a negotiated manner, that's the major stumbling block. Since 2016, there has been no SAARC summit. It was scheduled to be in Pakistan. India forced most of the countries to stay away and use a lot of diplomatic, economic, and even military coercion to do that. That's the reality. I'll not go beyond that. Since then, there has been no summit. And practically, let me, it may not sound good to you, but practically, let me tell you, SAARC is a dead horse. I don't know what kind of energy and what kind of antivirus injections and multivitamins are required to put a new life to it. So my comments on SAARC are good enough at that. I will speak to you on what is a new opportunity. As General Raza mentioned, BRI and CPEC has created new vistas, new avenues of regional and global connectivity, and new possibilities of economic progress through enhancing trade, through enhancing productivity, through enhancing exchange of goods, services, ideas. CPEC, I need not to go, you all know it. It's a flagship project of BRI out of the six. Even Beijing has very openly accepted that this is probably the most successful corridor. CPEC is not for Pakistan only. CPEC connects the western part of China, say Kashgar, to the southern part of Pakistan in the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean at the place called Gwadar. Now, Gwadar is a very unique place, which is a natural seaport. It's going to be a very big hub, not only for transportation of goods and services from China to Gwadar and beyond that to various other parts of the world. It's going to be a hub for the transshipment because within due course of time, there is a lot of progress already. Afghanistan and Central Asian states, they are going to join CPEC. China is very keen. All these countries are very keen. CPEC will be expanded to all these countries. And with this expansion, actually, their limitation of being landlocked will no more be there in the classic sense. It will liberate the western part of China as well from the point of view of being virtual or semi-landlocked, because moving from Urumqi or Xinjiang, or for that matter from Inner Mongolia and Ningxia, moving from there right up to the eastern coast of Shanghai and other ports is far more difficult and as compared to coming on to Gwadar. And it is going to resolve China's problem, which is called Malacca dilemma. Enough to be said about CPEC and the. Now coming on to Sri Lanka. There has been a lot of propaganda, you all know it, about Hambantota, about the debt trap, about the string of pearls, and what not. I'm aware of all this, and I'm sure you all are aware of that. But the fact remains that Hambantota is right at a place from the eastern side of Sri Lanka, more than 60-70% of the total global trade that flows from the SLOCs, sea lines of communication, which passes a few miles away from further east of Sri Lanka. And then you have Trincomalee, which is second largest natural harbor. So you can imagine opportunities are actually boundless and countless. Colombo port is already coming up as a hub for the transshipment. Most of the Indian transshipment takes place from Hambantota or from Dubai. However, when the facilities are developed at Hambantota and at Trincomalee, it is going to be a new ball game, a new different game altogether in terms of the transshipment between China, between Southeast Asia, even between Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, not through Pacific, but through coming on to towards the Indian Ocean and going to Atlantic Ocean and through the Red Sea going to Mediterranean. Focusing, only few words I will take, focusing on Pakistan-Sri Lanka relations. Well, as far as the diplomatic relations are concerned, there are always, ebbs and tides. They're always up and down. The domestic politics, the regional politics, the international politics, the regional players, the regional stakeholders, the regional hegemons, and the international hegemons, they will keep manipulating. They will keep twisting, the arms and whatever they can twist, they will keep twisting both of the Sri Lankan government and of the Pakistani government as well. The least would be, which is a benign type of not very visible direct influence, that is through the economic influence. What all happened in Sri Lanka when it defaulted, that is all known to us. I'm sure the situation was avoidable. If the international financial institutions had not strangulated Sri Lanka, the default could have been avoided. The default was not essentially because of the economic issues, it was, but it was not essentially because of the economic issue, it was because of some other issues. Let me very openly say so. It was because of the diplomatic issues and it was because of the political issues. So I'll not go beyond that. As far as Pakistan and Sri Lanka are concerned, I think they need to focus more on people-to-people contact. When I say the people-to-people contact, I basically talk of three areas. One is the business-to-business. I have visited almost all chambers of commerce, and I've talked to their chairman, to the president, and to these organizations, and I've been trying to enhance the bilateral trade between Pakistan and Sri Lanka. It is in fact negligible. It's a peanut. It can be multiplied many-fold and it can be increased. Well, we have been talking for the last 50, 60 years. Practically nothing much has been done. There are problems, there are barriers, there's a non-tariff barrier, and there are a lot of other things which need to be done. And the bureaucracy on both in both countries, they are responsible for this. We have, if not rotten, we have non-functional system, bureaucratic system in both countries. The other thing is educational relations, educational contacts, and the cultural context. Now, that is extremely very important. I will just mention only one aspect, that when I was in Sri Lanka, we had introduced 1,000 scholarships. I'm sure that is known to most of the Sri Lankan scholars, academicians, and the students. Let me just give you a small update. So far in the last 4 years, there are 73 students, those who were selected for medicine or medical related studies, 71 in engineering, and 203 in other subjects, 347 in total. These were 1,000 scholarships. Number of applicants have increased over a period of time, and I'm sure in the years to come. This was only for 4 years program, and the 4 years have already lapsed. I only yesterday spoke to Higher Education Commission, and I've been told that the program will be extended not only up to 1,000 scholarships, most probably beyond that as well. So that's a very good news for Sri Lankan students, those who wish to avail this. And there was another initiative on the cultural side, and that was to establish an Asian Study Center at Peradeniya University. Initially, we wanted to do it in Colombo University. I don't know if there is anybody from Colombo University here. A lot of conversations went on. I visited the Vice Chancellor. I don't want to tell them, I want to tell here what happened. Something happened, and unfortunately, I mean, they did not decline in that manner, but in practical sense, they did. So the Peradeniya was selected, and I think that's appropriate place. So I hope that institution will also emerge, and that will connect the Sri Lankan Buddhist scholars with the scholars of Gandhara civilization in Pakistan. We have a Texla Institute of Asian Studies at Quaid-e-Azam University. I think more probably Dr. Jaspal will be able to tell you about that. I think I've said almost of all points regarding how this connectivity can be enhanced, how these relations can be strengthened further. 4 or 5 main points. One is political stability. These are relevant both to Pakistan and to Sri Lanka. Am I still audible? Because I suddenly have a power failure at my house.
Sir, yes, you are still audible, but I would
Okay.
request you to conclude.
I'll conclude in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
The political stability, which would lead to long-term planning and which will result into economic progress. And more than that is at the regional level, peaceful resolution of the conflict. Easier said than done. And of course, we need to enhance bilateral trade. Thank you very much. These were my random thoughts. I've tried to cover based on my own experience. And let me just say one more sentence. I've already said I had a wonderful experience of visiting 15 universities in Sri Lanka, all national universities. And we invited vice chancellors and the dean of all these universities to Pakistan for 2 weeks, and they visited different places, and they visited all the universities and most of the universities in Pakistan, and they visited Texla as well. We also invited some monks, proper delegation, to take them to various Buddhist religious sites, and almost, I think, about 15 to 20 permanent secretaries, the additional secretaries, the head of various departments of the government, those who were potential secretaries to become, they were invited, and a special course was organized for them, special management executive course at the National School of Public Policy. So the possibilities of cooperation are actually endless. It's up to both the countries. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to manage? And what do you want to really, take place on ground? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your presentation. And in fact, the idea that BRI and CPEC could be the new vision of connecting South Asia was quite a point that you made. With that being said, we will be moving on to Professor Chaminda, and I would request all our esteemed speakers to please take stock of the time. We do have a lot to discuss in the discussion as well. With that being said, Professor Chaminda, please, you may present your points. Professor Chaminda, are we audible to you?
Yes. Thank you very
Alright.
much. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can hear me and see my presentation.
Yes, sir, you're audible and we're able to see your presentation as well.
Right. Thank you very much. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. At the very outset, I extend my sincere gratitude to the Regional Center for Studies in Sri Lanka and Islamabad Policy Research Institute in Pakistan for giving this valuable opportunity. I think the theme of this joint seminar organized by RCCS and IPRI is timely, relevant, and have valuable ramification for understanding and re-examination the role of Pakistan and Sri Lanka in promoting regional connectivity in South Asia. I also believe this joint seminar will shed light on various important issues prevailing in the region and some pragmatic initiatives and solutions upon which Pakistan and Sri Lanka can work together in order to sustain peace and economic prosperity in the region. With regard to bilateral relations, Sri Lanka and Pakistan have a free trade agreement dating back to 2005. Pakistan is Sri Lanka's second largest trading partner in South Asia after India. Since Pakistan and Sri Lanka has been conducting very friendly and long-standing bilateral relations, I'm very confident that both nations have potential to play a leading role in improving regional connectivity and contributing to the regional cooperation. In this context, my presentation will mainly focus on the key challenges and opportunities for South Asia to enhance its regional connectivity from a very pragmatic or functionalist perspective. Before moving further, I would like to clear my position. I'm not going to focus on the geopolitical contradictions or other socio-economic and political issues prevailing in the region, which have been overemphasized. But we know that the political controversies and the geopolitical issues are overemphasized. But I have realized that some pragmatic areas through which the region can flourish, existing regional cooperation is not adequately discussed. Therefore, I will adopt a pragmatic or a functionalist approach that enable me to explore some important avenues for South Asia to enhance its regional connectivity. In this context, education and research become very important because we do believe that education and research has great potential to be driving forces in promoting regional connectivity and regional awareness among the people. Therefore, I will also explain how the education and research play an important role in promoting connectivity in South Asia. So here I would like to specifically mention, I will be looking at a very pragmatic and important case study. So that is South Asian University, established by SAARC in 2010. These case studies will be helpful for us to see how can we move forward in terms of regional cooperation. We're talking about the failure of SAARC. We are talking about drawbacks of SAARC as a regional organization. So a lot of criticism towards SAARC. But I do believe that South Asian University is one of successful projects initiated by SAARC. So that's why today I want to share my experiences about the South Asian University and see how we can move further with this kind of practical examples, practical initiatives. So that's why I have selected South Asian University as a case study. So let me briefly explain what are the challenges and the issues faced by South Asia. I know that it's not easy for me to explain the challenges and the issues we are facing. So there are multiple, and I don't think that I can, even summarize. So therefore, I will focus on some of the key issues faced by South Asia, and also later I will explain you how we can overcome these issues through education and research. So I have a very important aspects to look at. So I have chosen two pragmatic areas, as I told you, research and education. Let's discuss how education and research can help us to enhance cooperation, connectivity in the region. South Asia has a distinct role to play international relations because of its geographical settings, vast population, and cultural diversity in the region. As we know, South Asia is home to approximately 1/4 of the world population and has the second largest population in the world. According to UN projections, population of India is expected to overtake China's in 2028. So become the world's most populous nation. These are the key challenges we need to think of. So when the population is increasing, South Asia needs to think of how to create increase in population. So the growing population can be seen in two different ways. So we can easily convert them into a labor force, and also this increase in population can poses challenges to South Asia as well. For example, when the population is increasing, South Asia has to think of how to, cater the needs or the basic needs of the people. At the same time, South Asia has to think of how to develop infrastructure according to demands coming from the increase in population. So I think the increase in population is one of major issues faced by South Asia. From a geopolitical perspective, South Asia holds a very important geopolitical position in relation to the rest of the world because it connects the East and the West. And also it has potential to bridge the global South with the North. It forms an important locus for discussing the role of global power rivalry in the region, as well as the role of democracy and democratic institution in bringing about and sustaining peace. The South Asian states have been facing grave economic, political, and social challenges due to multiple reasons that include increasing extremism, border conflicts, terrorism, extreme poverty, political instability, environmental issues, and lack of political commitments towards regional cooperation. And also, there are many other issues related to human security concerns. Above all, mistrust among South Asian countries has been the biggest challenge to achieve regional cooperation. I think those two speakers clearly mentioned how the mistrust and the internal issues we are facing in the region hinder the progress of connectivity and the economic and social integration in the region. Compared to other regions, so we can see that the regional cooperation in South Asia is relatively low and it is hindered by multiple factors. These domestic, regional, and global factors are menace and main hindrance in the progress and prosperity of this region. In addition, terrorism, along with human insecurity, has posed a serious threat to peace, security, and stability of this region. All South Asian countries began the process of modernization and development in the recent past, and there have been numerous problems and challenges which have affected the South Asian economies, including a recent COVID-19 pandemic situation, an ongoing political and economic crisis situation by South Asia. And also, the region needs to tackle the increasing non-traditional security threats in order to promote well-being of the people and improve the quality of their lives by investing resources in human development and implementing constitutional provisions that protect fundamental human rights and dignity. So with this, let me move the case study that I have chosen, South Asian University. As you see here, South Asian University was established in 2008 under initiatives of SAARC, and I'm very happy to say now South Asian University has shifted to new premises. Previously, it was in Chanakyapuri, New Delhi, but now South Asian University has got the opportunity to shift it to area where it can effectively function with a large space and infrastructure. South Asian University opened its door to students in August 2010. Let me briefly explain my experience in South Asian University. I do believe this university as a regional institution allow students to share their experiences and also to learn about the region. Currently, this university offers doctoral and master's program in 7 areas: applied mathematics, biotechnology, computer science, development economics, international relations, law, and sociology. It's not only about the disciplinary knowledge. So we can learn about different cultures, how South Asian people think, how the youth think about SAARC, how the youth think about the region, whether there is an idea called regional identity and some of the key problems faced by our region. And also we got opportunity to share our experience about our domestic issues. So therefore, I do believe South Asian University help this region to aware about what we are having in common. What is the vision of this university? So this university was established to enhance learning in South Asian community that promotes an understanding of each other's perspectives and strengthens regional consciousness. I think this idea is very important. As you see here, the one of major objectives of South Asian University to promote regional consciousness. At least we should know that we are belonging to South Asia, but very unfortunately, we very rarely claim that or demand that we are a South Asian. So that's why when we compare with the South Asia with other regions, we feel that our identity formation is very weak. But some other regions and the people coming from other regions, they do claim that they are belonging to those regions. So I think one important point I want to highlight here is that the regional identity is very, very important. I think South Asian University can be one such initiatives to which we can form or help our young communities to develop an idea of regional identity. And also this university promote liberal and humane education among South Asian students. And third, you can say South Asian University is aiming at enhancing capacity building of South Asian nations in different disciplinary areas. So based on my experience, I would like to suggest some recommendations for South Asian University. But I have felt that South Asian University should be more regional. Let me briefly explain what I meant by more regional university. So what we can see now, the participation from countries like Maldives, Pakistan, even Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal. So it is not satisfactory. So if you really want to make this genuine regional university, I do believe that all South Asian universities should contribute and students should join South Asian University and become agents of South Asian Regional Cooperation. And also I suggest that the South Asian University should introduce new programs through which it can promote South Asian identity and which it can actually help students to learn more about the culture and the historical heritage of South Asia. So, and also the research collaboration play a very, very important. Therefore, South Asian University can play a leading role in promoting research among South Asian nation, and also it can think of student exchange program as well. So here I want to emphasize on the idea of regional learning. So let me briefly explain how the idea of regional learning can be differentiated from the regional studies or other type of regional studies. It's not just offering a course module or a program on regional studies. So what we have to learn from the idea of regional learning is it should give us a very in-depth and detailed knowledge about the region about which we are studying. So this regional learning can be achieved through various activities. As you see here, we can think of teacher training, skill development programs, and also we can have joint seminars and joint curriculum development workshops to enhance the knowledge about the region where we live. I think this is very important for us to think of how we can move further in terms of regional connectivity, because if we have a better idea, understanding about our region, I'm very sure that it can be a basis for us to move further. This is a simple formula I want to share with you. So I think that if you have advanced knowledge or a comprehensive understanding about the region, in-depth knowledge about the cultures and the people with whom we live, so definitely it will help us to region identity formation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Chaminda, for a very in-depth analysis of how research can help not just Sri Lanka, Pakistan, but the region to pursue cooperation. Thank you for your presentation. It was indeed quite in-depth. Moving forward, we have now Dr. Salma Malik, and followed by Dr. Salma Malik, we will have Dr. Jaspal speaking. Ma'am Salma, please, you may present.
Thank you very much. I'm most grateful to the RCSS and to IPRI, two institutes who are very close to my heart. But RCSS organizing this particular conference on bilateralism is something very, very fascinating, not only bilateralism, but as also regionalism, because RCSS by itself embodies several of these things, and I will not take too much time. General Hashmat Saab has so comprehensively covered the entire gamut of the bilateral relations that I'll try and use a slightly different lens, but it was so educative to have some fascinating speakers providing their views on this issue prior to me. Anyway, so when we are looking at enhancing the regional cooperation in South Asia and using the people-to-people lens, here I would use the multi-track diplomacy angle, and would like to see that despite the fact that Pakistan and Sri Lanka are so close to each other, the hearts and the commitment and the friendship that these two countries enjoy with each other is not something that is new. I would borrow the thoughts that were provided by one of our very senior researchers, Sabia Hassan, in an article as old as 1985, in which she quotes Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founding father of Pakistan, who at the time of Ceylon, Sri Lanka's independence, gave this message on the 4th of February 1948, where he said that Pakistan has the warmest goodwill towards Ceylon at that time, since that was the name of the country. And I'm sanguine that the good feeling which exists between our two people will be further strengthened as the years roll by, and our common interest and mutual and reciprocal handling of them will bring us into closer friendship, which is so such a thought that that has not really gone away. Pakistan and Sri Lanka, although there have been phases, and today while we sit and look back, those phases are becoming longish. But the very fact is that it doesn't take much for these two countries to come closer, even if the distance or the time factor comes in between. And when the Sri Lankan premier John Kotelewala in 1953 visited Pakistan to seek a bilateral agreement, he said that I was anticipating very hard bargaining and long drawn out talks with Pakistan. But when he supped with Liaquat Ali Khan, in one sentence, the Pakistani Prime Minister very aptly said this thing, that Ceylon is our friend and Ceylon will not ask for anything unreasonable. Give it whatever she wants. So this is how these relations have fostered. It has been an unconditional friendship, and we have not really demanded anything unreasonable from one another. So if I look at the wheel of multi-track diplomacy, the first aspect in that wheel, as my previous colleague, Professor Chaminda, talked about the South Asian University, such initiatives, although they came out of SAARC by itself, a major victory and a major development that was brought out by the smaller countries of South Asia, since we are looking at these countries by size, but under no circumstances they are smaller in their stature. But Sri Lanka and Bangladesh were the countries which initiated the SAARC process. And the reason that we see so many of the charter, the way it has been brought out, was extremely perceptive in a sense that the founders of SAARC, they initially knew that if we allow bilateralism, that is going to mar SAARC. And the sentiment and the great perception with which they initially carried the process speaks for the fact that despite 30 plus years, SAARC may be on a ventilator, SAARC may be dead for many of us, SAARC may be actually for the coming generation not at all a reality to think about. Yet the fact is that there are several things, including the South Asia University and many other aspects that SAARC fostered into the hearts and minds of the South Asians. And we are carrying that legacy forward without realizing that that too is in the spirit of SAARC. SAARC did try to have a little bit of revival when the COVID happened. And I so wish that individuals around us, the individuals in South Asia, should not or would not have shot down the process the way it happened. But one can talk about history endlessly, but we need to look at what are the positive channels and tools through which we can actually foster not only good bilateral relations between Pakistan and Sri Lanka, but also use that bilateral grid to look at what the regional cooperation could be and how the region can be roped into one entity. We all have this common agreement, at least the Pakistanis do, that the elephant in the room is India. And under Modi, there are several other challenges that we additionally face. Modi is not exactly warm on SAARC. He is a minilateralist, but SAARC -1, that is Pakistan, is something that he would like to work on. And that is not how SAARC would work. So that is one of the main reasons SAARC is not working. Yet the fact is that under the SAARC, there were several other aspects, as I said earlier, that are working, that have worked. The only thing that we glaringly see is that the SAARC summit, which is the apex body, is not really working out. The second factor is the lack of commitment by the regional actors into committing their resources into this process, despite the fact that it's a very menial amount that they have to give in percentage. Yet the fact is that, like the rest of the world, the post-COVID world is becoming poorer and poorer. And these are few of the factors that SAARC would not perform. The fact that South Asian University, my previous colleague pointed out, and I'm so happy that there are some positive movements on that university, because we have also worked a lot on that. And the very wisdom as to why such a university was created is also the victim of the same thinking that do not allow anything to work, and it will not work. However, the good things that are still there and that can be revived, and that can be not only revived, they are very much alive and functioning, that can be bettered. One of those processes is the RCSS by itself, the Regional Center for Security Studies, of which several of us, including myself, are the alums. And when way back in 1998, I was introduced by Dr. Iftikharuzzaman, a true regionalist, to this process. I got introduced, that was my first window, not only to the region, but to the outside world. And we learned a lot through the RCSS process. It provided a space to the youth of South Asia to come together, learn from each other, learn from the experts in this field. And many of that youth today are youthful, yet the fact is that we remain sort of linked with one another. All we need to do is go back to our RCSS grid, and we will find some friend somewhere in the world who was once part of the summer workshops or the winter workshops, a recipient of the Kodikara Award, a recipient of any of the other scholarships and awards that were coming out from the RCSS platform. Another offshoot of the RCSS was the COSAT. And again, when we sit together at the COSAT platform, we have nearly all of the RCSS alums coming together and talking about various things. So I sincerely feel that such institutes, such organizations or institutions by themselves, I would actually say the RCSS has survived one of the lowest phases of an institution's life form, going through all the difficulties and coming out big time, is a testimony of the fact that connectivity and networking is extremely important. When we people would come together on such platform, and today several of us are senior enough and several more senior to us, when we come together on a Track 2 channel, there's a lot that we don't need to talk about, and we understand what the other person's thought process or mind is all about, and that makes that connection very easy. That makes it very easy for us to interact with one another. So, talking about connectivity, unfortunately, the physical connectivity in South Asia is diminishing by the day. I think there are very few countries, including Sri Lanka, where Pakistan has a direct flight. But unfortunately, if you need to access any other neighborhood or any other region in South Asia, you need to travel out of South Asia to travel back into South Asia, which is an extremely difficult and a very tragic situation. And we are actually making concerted efforts to break this connectivity because we don't want. Javeria, please just let me know when I'm coming to my time end. I don't really want to talk endlessly because I do see my colleague, Dr. Zafar Jaspal, who is half a kilometer distance from me. And I really don't want to have a physical kind of a tiff with him if he decides to evict me from here. However, that physical connectivity or the lack of physical connectivity is today, as we sit here in this webinar, is substituted by online connectivity. And we can actually use this connectivity. We can actually use these bilateral grids. Today, IPRI and RCSS are together holding this webinar, and there's so many people who have joined us to build or rebuild, reconnect with one another on such platform. And I would request all those donor organizations that they need to once again invest in case they're interested in having South Asia as a cohesive region, invest in the future of South Asia by empowering such institutes which are working at a regional level and trying to build a regional connectivity. Other things that we have seen when it comes to Sri Lanka and Pakistan, recently we had this young Sri Lankan actor, Jihali Tishaya, who was part of a Pakistani military led drama called Sin Peyahan, Women of Iron, or Iron-Fisted Women, and she became an overnight sensation in Pakistan. She also reminded us of another Sri Lankan movie diva, Sabita, who used to grace the movie screens in big time way back in the 1980s. But nothing of those sorts are happening today at a big platform. Pakistani cinema is reviving. I think there is a time that we need to bring together our synergies and try and see how these things happen. In Pakistan, Tamil music is extremely popular, but that music is coming primarily from India. And I remember when we would be in Shanghai or any of the RCSS-led activities, at night we would all be sitting together. Some of us won't even have a common language, but we would be singing a song that was popular for all of us. Thank you, Javeria. Just give me 2 minutes and I'm finishing. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the sounder. What are the grids that we have where we can come together? Tourism, We already have that holy Buddhist trail that is part of this thing. General Shahid Hashmat has talked about the Texla Institute for Asian Civilization. I think we have also held few conferences. We have scholarships which are being given to Sri Lankan students by the name of Ilama Iqbal and Jinnah Scholarship. And as the higher education website says, that there have been 2,000 beneficiaries coming from Sri Lanka who have benefited on this particular platform. Pakistan and Sri Lanka have a very robust institution-to-institution contact, the military-to-military contact, where a lot of Sri Lankan military officers have graduated from Pakistani military institutions. And the previous Prime Minister's 2021 visit also resulted in a joint Pakistan-Sri Lankan exercise called Shaking Hands 1. Pakistan has also learned, helped Sri Lanka, taught Sri Lanka, and stood with Sri Lanka, and vice versa. Sri Lanka has done likewise when it comes to counterterrorism activities, both the countries. However, the point that I need to elaborate here is that this is more an institutional collaboration rather than a countrywide collaboration. The need of the hour is to spread out this collaboration and spread it out and make it very concentrated and very vigorous at the country level. And for that purpose, I would also say that the BRI CPEC avenue is something that needs to be exploited better. And instead of feeling scared of what is happening around us, change is always a bit scary for those who develop a conventional or conservative vision. We need to come together, put our synergies together, and figure out how we can use these potentials, these opportunities to the best of our advantage. There have been many collaborations that Pakistan has had with Sri Lanka in the recent past, 2021, but the last time Pakistan actually had a regional vision was in the late 1980s. Amongst the last things that I would say is that if you're opening scholarships for Sri Lankan students or Pakistani students in Sri Lanka, and what I have noticed is, or perhaps the Sri Lankan High Commission's website to Pakistan is not updated, there haven't been so many scholarships for Pakistanis. And when you go to Sri Lanka, you find beautiful gems, the way they are carved, semi-precious stones, precious stones. I think collaboration, Pakistan has a whole lot of stones that we sell in the raw, and they are fine-tuned by other countries and sold with a lot of money, and they earn a lot of revenue at their expense. And I think we can put our hands together and work on such dimensions. So what we need to do is to, and these are absolutely the last words, Javeria, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to exploit, explore, revive our pre-existing linkages, the people-to-people contact. My first time to Sri Lanka in December 1998, at the peak of Sri Lankan insurgency, had all the Sri Lankans welcoming us with a huge smile, making us lit the diya and making our experience at the beautiful seaside resorts, anytime that we went to Sri Lanka, even after the tsunami, a beautiful experience by itself, which speaks for the resilience of the Sri Lankan people and also for the Pakistani people. I think we need to revive that spirit and work on the pre-existing channels, but with a new vision, with a new commitment, and also see that what are the stalemated areas that need to be revigorated and thought about. Thank you very much for giving me the space. Sorry, Javeria, for overstepping my time. God bless everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Salma. It's always a pleasure listening to you. But with that being said, we do have in line Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal Sahab. Thank you so much. You've been waiting for quite some time, sir. We look forward to your remarks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Javera. I think that I'm audible. And I'm very much grateful to the president of IPRI, Ambassador Raza, and my other colleagues there, and for giving me this opportunity to talk about very important topic, what we call it, enhancing regional cooperation in South Asia through people-to-people contacts. Before starting my presentation, let me make it clear that I am a beneficiary of Regional Center for Strategic Studies Kodekara Award. And at that time, when I received this award, I was working as a researcher at the Islamabad Policy Research Institute. So I have a long connection with both the institutes, in one as an alumnus and with the other as a former employee or a researcher. So naturally, it gives me a great pleasure and honor to speak on this forum. And that's why I'm very much obliged to the IPRI team, especially the president and his team manager of this conference. Having said this, it's an established fact that already has been said a lot. But we have to keep in mind, when we look about the South Asia with the people-to-people connectivity perspective for enhancing regional cooperation, South Asia is home to about 1.5 billion people of the world, 23rd to 24% of the world population. The South Asians historically had strong trade and cultural ties for centuries, because many of them were seen by their inhabitants and rulers as a connected landmass, an integrated economic space well before the British colonized them as components of the British Indian Empire. These ties were disrupted, and significantly, political differences emerged with the second half of the 20th century. Today, despite our common heritage, South Asia is the least integrated region in the world. Precisely, historical conflicts, border disputes, and ongoing political tensions between countries in the region make it difficult to foster cooperation and regional integration. These daunting challenges necessitate a fresh look for the regional peace and prosperity. Indeed, peace and cooperation can be enhanced in the region through revitalization of organizations like SAARC and initiatives like SAFTA in political, social, economic, and cultural spheres. I agree with the Ambassador Ashmad, our previous speaker, when he very adequately or very clearly said SAARC is dead, but still, we do not have another option. We have to work over its revival. The South Asian leaders have to change their approach towards geopolitics. They need to shift their focus from the geostrategic importance of their countries to geoeconomics and geotechnology. These are the two keys for the South Asians to be a prosperous nations. In this context, India and Pakistan have to realize the dynamics of strategic equilibrium due to their nuclear arsenals and restart suspended dialogue process for the sake of their people's well-being. Without their bilateral constructive engagement, the current deplorable situation of South Asia will not improve. For instance, the rebooting of SAARC demands their cooperative behaviors. The people of entire South Asia have a strong desire for resolution of outstanding disputes, promotion of peace, stability, multifaceted cooperation, and enhancing people-to-people contact. India and Pakistan are having democratic political systems. Therefore, their people's role in decision-making is guaranteed by their constitutions. The people of Pakistan and India in the forthcoming general election could demand their political elite for resumption of dialogue process between the antagonistic neighbors. Of course, who will articulate? For articulating such demands, the role of civil society seems imperative, as it is an established fact that the civil societies can act as a catalyst in the initiation of regional cooperation initiatives, as they generally have a significant voice in the policy-making processes of their respective states and are also recognized across the borders for their philanthropic activities. Civil societies of the South Asian nations could therefore influence the regional cooperation process by providing a vision, interpreting and explaining that vision to different stakeholders, especially opposition parties in their respective nations. They can inform, educate, and advocate the agenda of political groups to achieve a consensus on different regional issues. The civil societies of India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, or other aim to pursue not only their respective governments for fulfillment of their needs, but to take some of the initiatives in their own hand and become direct stakeholders in the process of regional cooperation and integration. Of course, various mechanisms for enhancing people-to-people contacts were adopted by the SAARC, which is now non-functional. A few of them are like SAARC Audio-Visual Exchange Program, SAARC Documentation Center, SAARC Scheme of Promotion Organization, Organized Tourism, SAARC Chairs, Fellowships and Scholarship Schemes, SAARC Youth Volunteers, Visa Exemption Schemes. Of course, without the rebooting of the SAARC, it's impossible to materialize all these kind of things. My understanding is that all these initiatives are excellent concepts for promotion of people-to-people relations. However, the derailment of SAARC undermines these initiatives. Now the question is how we can enhance the people-to-people contact. For the people-to-people contact, as I said earlier, let me re-emphasize the civil societies in South Asia could enhance the communication networks between academicians, writers, scholars, artists, and journalists, retired military and civil servants. The IPRI and RCSS, this current effort of this webinar is a good initiative for such activities. We have to broaden the scope. We have to broaden the number of these activities. Through the people-to-people contact, we achieve greater regional cooperation, which is imperative for building better South Asia with climate resilience, inclusive economic growth, and more opportunities. Now, in this context, when we are looking about all these kind of the things, where I have identified, keeping in mind Sri Lanka, Pakistan's bilateral relation, my colleague, Professor Salma, very rightly pointed out, while she was enlisting that the training institutes, Sri Lankans are coming here. I have my own School of Politics and International Relations. In the recent years, 3 very important students graduated, Sri Lankan students graduated from here, like Sri Lanka Rushdie Nazar, who is now a very active journalist in Sri Lanka. Then we have 2, including one was Anas, he was a Sri Lankan diplomat, he did masters with us, and then there's recently one of the diplomats has completed his MPhil with us. We have another things which we have it, and earlier, Ambassador Ashman has also pointed out, I am a member of this center committee by Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, which made a committee, and we approved this memorandum of agreement recently to establish the establishment of Center of Asian Civilization and Culture in Peradeniya University. I personally visited Peradeniya University, beautiful place near to the Kandy, or similarly, beautiful beaches like Angola. So by this, when we look about these kind of the things, of course, this institute for 5 years, its funding has been approved by the Higher Education Commission, which will be there for working for this research and connectivity. Such institutes are very important. Earlier, my Sri Lankan professor mentioned about the South Asian University. It's a good idea, but we need to have these kind of the things out of the India and Pakistan, like Sri Lanka, or Nepal, or Bhutan, where we can go and bilateral conflict shall not undermine these activities. Between India and between Sri Lanka and Pakistan, and that could be further strengthened. I have identified 4, you can say, areas of cooperation, which are very important. I'm not elaborating my first area of cooperation, which I said, I myself is a part of this. I'm a beneficiary of RCSS Kodikara Award, and definitely when we are working on this memorandum of agreement for establishment of Center of Asian Civilization and Culture at Peradeniya University, it was a very important. So first area is educational cooperation, and my both Pakistani colleagues have already highlighted the significance and its operability. The most important area which we are missing, where the Sri Lankan and Pakistanis can cooperate, and later on the others can also join it. and that is blue economy. The blue economy is a buzzword. Without, you can say, harnessing the blue economy benefits or dividends, neither Pakistan, nor Sri Lanka, nor the other Indian Ocean rim states can prosper. So that is the area where we can learn from the Sri Lankans and they can learn from us. And we can cooperate and we can engage the other South Asians as well, who are littoral states. The most important another area is religious tourism for Sri Lankans and Nepalis, Bhutanis. That is very important. We are you can say, large number of their places for them, for this religious tourism, like Taxila, near like Takhbhai, where we have these monasteries of the Buddhists before from the BC. So these are the areas where we can work together, and naturally, in a return, Pakistanis are going for tourism. Sri Lanka's beaches are beautiful for that. And the fourth is, of course, technological cooperation. We are in an era of new emerging technologies, and every institutes are now working. The universities are now, you can say, dedicating their groups. Sri Lanka, Pakistan can work for this joint venture of emerging technologies. And there we can include the Indians, we can include the Nepalis, Bhutanis, Sri Lankans, Maldives as well. So SAARC, we can constitute some kind of these kind of the groups on the basis of which obviously the people-to-people contact will survive. We will be able to manage the conflicts. We are able to, after managing the conflicts through the people-to-people contact, we can head towards the conflict resolution and finally conflict transformation. Having said this, I once again reiterate and re-emphasize my point that these are the broader four areas which I identified: economic, educational, tourism, and technology. If we can work together, starting with the Sri Lanka or RCSS, IPRI, joint ventures or joint working papers, and then on the basis of that, engaging our other South Asian partners, and we move ahead. Of course, these are the four areas which are not, you can say, strategically or in a you can say traditional security domain. We can just leave aside the traditional security challenges, focus on the non-traditional security challenges. And in that context, of course, BRI, CPAC is the flagship project. Gwadar is very important. And Batota is very important. So this kind of the connectivities, we can tape them and explore them. I think the South Asia will become a pivot for West Asia, Euro-Asia, Central Asia, if we South Asian realize the potential which we enjoyed, the potential of connectivity which we had before the British colonization or before at least decolonization processes. So these are the way. Of course, without the people-to-people contact, we cannot move ahead. Thank you once again, IPRI and RCSS, for providing me this opportunity to speak on this very important forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jaspal, for your viewpoints pertaining to the topic at hand. We will be now moving on to the discussion, question and answer session on the topic at hand. Given the restraints on time, we will be limiting the number of questions that could be asked in total to three or four questions. So if you could please post your questions on the chat box together with the name of the speaker whom you want to address it to, that will be a huge thing. It's a huge help. We have one question that has been addressed by Ms. Kanishka Kuritokku to Dr. Jaspal. So the question reads, could you please give a few more examples as to how Sri Lanka and Pakistan could work together on the concept of blue economy?
I think that Pakistan is now, thank you very much for the question. Pakistan is now working and we are trying to explore our blue economy advantages. And Sri Lanka, of course, and Ireland, they have a better understanding than us to have it. In the blue economy, we have aqua, we have fishing, we have other sort of thing, we have tourism, we have a number of the things in that context. We need to establish, for example, There's no, which earlier Salma also pointed out, that from Gwadar to Colombo or from Gwadar to other ports of the Sri Lanka or Karachi to Colombo, we do not have any shipping line. We can start from there as well. And we can explore the oceans, especially within our own, what we call it, these legal zones, which they call it the sort of thing. And we work over it. So there are many sort of things that from working and cooperating with each other and learning from one and each other's best practices. And we can enhance and improve this area.
Thank you so much, sir. So we will be moving on to the next question, and that is again by the same participant. It says, it asks, can you briefly explain as to what are the future strategies and opportunities that we can work together in cultural exchanges between Pakistan and Sri Lanka? And this has been addressed to Dr. Salma. And I believe that this has been answered in the chat box, in the chat box, and the answer reads: the pre-existing avenues need to be revived and worked on. Economics, education, trade, and commerce, institutional plus connectivity. Madam, do you need to do you want to add anything onto that, or is this will this be section? Go ahead.
I have one sentence to add before Salma, please permit me. I think that on all these issues, if you see, we have already mechanisms, arrangement. Only thing is that how we can operationalize and maximize them. Over to Madam Salma.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, that the point that I made, Nayani, in my presentation primarily was that we have all of these setups there. We have very old friendship. Even at the peak of terrorism, either in Sri Lanka or in Pakistan, our relations never really suffered. They may appear to have kind of like, not really shown too much of visibility, but that strong bondage never severed, and it was always there. So what we need to actually do is maintain the same channels, but make them more workable, make them more operational. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already there. The wheel is there. That is why we have IPRI today coordinating with our CSS. We have General Hashmat. We have so many of our colleagues who have been Pakistan's representatives to Sri Lanka and several of Sri Lanka's representatives to Pakistan. We, myself, Dr. Jaspal, we are the citizen diplomats who have worked towards bilateralism, plus the fact that cricket is a major grid for both these countries. And all of these aspects are very positive aspects and least controversial. But what is required is to use them more effectively, use them with a lot of wisdom, despite knowing the difficulties that we face, the elephants in the room, and make them implementable. From Pakistan's side, I will definitely say one thing, that our country lacks a regional vision. We need to go back to our friends in the region and develop good relations with them. And only then, the point that Professor George was also talking about, having that commitment to regionalism, is what is going to save the day for us. Thank you so much.
May I say one word?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. What has been said by Dr. Jaspal and Dr. Salma, I respect that. And with due respect to their opinion and their very, very optimistic views as academician, let me add few words, not to be pessimistic, but to be more realistic as a practitioner and the one who has handled these issues personally. Yes, the mechanism which Professor Jaspal is saying is there, but please let me say and accept that mechanism is stagnant. And the wheel, which Dr. Salma has said, unfortunately, is rusty and it is rotten. Don't get disappointed with this, because the younger generation has to understand this. that on ground things are determined by the ground realities and not by simple slogans of going deep into the sea and climbing Himalayas. Uh, a lot can be done. Unfortunately, nothing is being done. And let me say only one word, and that one word is, whereas Pakistan has, Sri Lanka has a lot of commonalities, one of the ugly and the dirty commonality is both countries are suffering from elite capture. The elite capture of political decision making, the elite capture of economic stagnation and economic strangulation. Unless both countries, by some means, of course, that's a lengthy discussion, we can get out of the clutches of elite capture, nothing will improve. Sorry to say so.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have one more question, and with that, we will wind up the session. So the question has been directed towards Dr. George. And the question reads, can Sri Lanka in its present conditions work as an effective mediator in bridging the India and Pakistan gap with regards to regional cooperation? If not, what are the improvements Sri Lanka should work on to get there?
Thank you. Thank you, Harini, and thank you for that question. What we need to bear in mind is that we have had opportunities in the past. Sri Lanka has punched well above her weight in the past. Sadly, we have not seen that happening in more recent times. We have not seen that same degree of engagement in the South Asian context. But then there are also other reasons for that. We had the conflict intervening in the Sri Lankan case. The trajectory of the country changed completely. We had a non-state actor who completely derailed the process of and the path that Sri Lanka was on. But we are now 13, 14 years after the fight on the ground, the defeat of terror on Sri Lankan soil. And this is where Sri Lanka should be looking at opportunities, ways and means through which we can enhance our engagement in the region. 2016 was such an opportunity, which we lost, which we did not do enough about. We did not take that initiative. But of course, that has got to come from the highest levels of the state. As High Commissioner Hashmat mentioned, it has got to come from very elite groups who function in our respective countries, who have got to take that initiative of stepping forward and saying, we are going to facilitate dialogue, we are going to promote dialogue because it's for the benefit of all. You're going to resolve or trying to address, maybe you can't resolve it, maybe it's irreversible, but it's not something that we're going to have completely taking over our dialogue, our discourse in the years ahead. If we keep doing that, we're never going to make progress. We're never going to see change. We're going to see generation after generation continuing to experience this. And we've seen examples in other parts of the world which we should learn from, which we should be able to assimilate into our region and take forward. So Sri Lanka certainly can play a much bigger role. Yes, the country is going through something quite unique in what we are seeing happening here right now, but hopefully we will see some kind of dissipation, some kind of reduction in the issues that we are facing. But of course, we need to be looking at the bigger picture of where we are going. What is the role Sri Lanka can play on the world stage? At the moment, we are trying to survive and not sink. That is a problem within the country, which we are trying to address. And a lot is being done to that, to resolve that issue. But Sri Lanka should be engaging that much more in multilateral fora, be it SAARC, be it the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Pakistan is now a full member of the SCO. Sri Lanka is still a dialogue partner. Sri Lanka was the first dialogue partner in 2009. What have we done to enhance our engagement with the SCO? The SCO has huge potential for the years and decades ahead. How much more are we engaging with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? India and Pakistan are both members there, full permanent members. And that is where you also have China, you have Russia coming on board. You have countries from Central Asia coming on board. You have dialogue partners such as Turkey also being included therein. this is a grouping that is going to have much potential in the future. And this is where Sri Lanka needs to invest a lot more in regionalism, not only in terms of what we're going to get out of it, but what we're going to put into it. And one thing that we can put into the process in the South Asian context is in terms of mediation when it comes to certain issues that we are facing over here.
Okay, so we'll just take, wait. Oh no, that's it. So with that, we will be concluding our set of the question and answer session. And now I invite Ms. Javaria to conclude the session. Over to you, Javaria.
Thank you so much, Harini, and thank you so much to all our respective speakers who joined us and the audience members. I would now like to request President IPRI to conclude with a vote of thanks. And with that, we will be ending our webinar. President, you are not unmuted.
Unmute myself. Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding. Thank you so much, everyone. We had a wonderful discourse and very good discussion. I would like to just repeat one or two things which I said in an earlier introduction, and a few speakers also resounded those words. First is the regionalism, then the connectivity, and also the interdependence. I think these are the way forwards for the South Asia, whether it is Pakistan, India, whether it is all the 8 countries of South Asia, whether it is SAARC, whether it is the other members of these forums or the observers. There is no other way but to have a relook, look inwards, get into the region, develop regional connectivity, and then look outwards. The people are busy elsewhere when we are talking of the West, when we are talking of the greater powers. They're busy elsewhere and they do not have time and resources now to look towards South Asia or this region. This region has lost its importance after exit of United States from Afghanistan. They do not have time and they do not have money and they do not have actually what to say is desire or appetite to look this way. So best is look inwards, and all the regional countries should get together, rethink, revisit their stances, and collaborate, at least start collaborating on the basis of interdependence, that despite having differences, non-state actors or people below the state level should interact with each other, people to people, business to business, as alluded to by worthy speakers. With this, I once again thank you all. The Executive Director, Ms. Harini, I could not pronunciate your name right initially. Thank you so much. You conducted very well. And Javaria too. Thank you both the girls. You did a wonderful job and you made it happen. Thank you to everyone. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you again
Thank you so
in
much.
more episodes.
Thank you very much.